Afternoon if you're watching stateside. Just turn noon if you're watching on the Pacific Coast. Great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. And it is wonderful to have David Atherton join us once again. David, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, well, good evening and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. And well, Peter, it's always a pleasure to come on your program. It's always a pleasure to meet up.
And you were doing we're talking before, you were doing the late stint on Talk TV where people can find you often.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I've been doing it for about best part of a year now, actually. I think I've been on there about 20, 30 times as a regular. Started off being irregular, and I think I seems to have gone from every 3 weeks to 2 weeks and now weekly. So, yeah, it's a late show on Talk TV. Normally starts about 11 o'clock at night. And what I do is they do record it, and what I do post the whole 2 or 3 hour show. So keep following me on Twitter, and you get the updates.
Absolutely, and on your Twitter at Dave Atherton 20, and you just passed the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I have indeed, yeah. Well, I was so astonished. Would have been about 2012 when I got up to 1,000 followers. I was equally astonished when we got up to 10,000, but to hit the 100,000, I just find it unbelievable. I've got no idea what I'm doing right.
Well, something's working, or someone's watching over you from above, or something's working, or whatever it is. But great to have you in there. Lots of stories, of course, and welcome to the War Room Posse joining us on Rumble and Getter. Great to have you over there stateside. But let's jump on the first story, and we'll do an intro to this for our US viewers. And this is Joey Barton. Joey Barton, ex-footballer, and has been lighting up Twitter like I haven't seen in quite a while. So this is one of the posts of many, one of the safer posts to read out. He says, I was surprised by your wife. He's talking to Ed Balls, an ex-politician. This is his wife, Yvette Cooper, also a Labour politician, calling the people of Knowsley far right, considering it's been one of Labour's safe seats for decades. I was always surprised to see one of your kids is a tranny. Must sting. Horrible mental illness. Wish him well in his recovery. No, it's not just this, but Joey seems to be going full on everything, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what's triggered, but as you've watched this, tell me what you've thought, because it does seem a joy to watch.
Well, it does indeed. Yes, it's the whole establishment, in meltdown, isn't it? Sort of thing. He criticised those two football commentators. I think he compared them to Fred and Rosie West, didn't he?
Who are serial killers for those over in the States.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think Barton has got over the top in what he said there. But what I think what Joey Barton is, it's Iniola and Lucy Ward, who were former England internationals when it comes to they're soccer football commentators in the UK, and but most blokes in this country, most men don't really like women commentating on the football. They don't mind them being referees and linesmen and being the anchors for TV programs and posing the questions. But when it comes to the football analysis, they really quite resent it. They much prefer the blokes who have played it at that level to actually make some commentary on it. But whilst I think Joey Barton is probably a little bit on the naughty side on his choice of language there. What he's doing is he's speaking for a lot of people that have got fed up of having political correctness rammed down their throat. Like a man commentating on pro celebrity knitting probably isn't going to go down well either. So sorry, football. I think also as well. I'm an ex-footballer myself, and I used to manage teams as well. 3 stone ago, and Saturday afternoon was my little bit of bloke time. And of course, there's nothing misogynist about it. It was like women like spending time together without any men there. It's just the same thing with football. I think what Joey Barton is, he's tapping into the resentment that women have taken over a male space.
Yeah, not completely. But he's also gone. I mean, we've seen obviously Matt Lettice being punished for his comments, and you're supposedly not allowed to have comments as a footballer if you're. Well, Matt wasn't. I wouldn't even have said it was on the right. Of course, you are allowed to have whatever comments you are if you're someone like Gary Lineker.
Yeah, sure.
So it is. It's certainly not a level playing field in any shape or form.
Two-tier Britain, isn't it? Two-tier policing, two-tier Britain. There's the Overton window, what is permissible to say, and if you step outside the Overton window, you'll be buried by the establishment and all the wokies and all the PC brigade, and you'll be cancelled, and you won't have any work, you won't have another job in the industry. I think that'll happen to Joey Barton as well, to a greater extent. But I suppose we would be grateful there is at least one or two areas where working class men are represented, who do have a say and are allowed to say what they like, even if it is slightly controversial. I think Joey Barton, he was over the top in what he said, but as I say again, he's hit a raw nerve with a lot of blokes. By the way, he's got a poll running. Am I right? I just checked out before I came on, actually. It's got something like best part of 80,000 votes. So it's reasonable. A reasonable number of people. And about 20% disagree with him. 21% don't give a toss. And 50% agree with Joey Barton. Women commentators should not be allowed on football.
It's I was kind of watching what's happening. Obviously there will be a backlash news about them, but Joey's kind of generally been someone who speaks his mind. It's not like someone like Matt Lettice who kind of fitted in and then just did a tweet and suddenly then there's a backlash. Joey's always been someone who's kind of always up for a fight, always on the edge, never fitted in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just Joey Barton as you kind of would have thought of him, kind of as a rough and tumble footballer. Actually, that's just coming out on social media side.
Well, indeed. I think it's probably best to say that when he was a player, he was quite aggressive, shall we say? I think he had one or two incidents on that, to say the least. But I'm saying that though, funny enough, the producer I work with at Talk TV has worked with Joey Barton. He says he's a lovely guy, really down to earth guy and reasonable, and what have you. He only said nice things about him. He said he's polite, he's respectful. But I think we've had sort of I suppose you probably the woke culture goes back to Gamergate in 2004. So we really had 10 years of unremitting political correctness and wokiness, and you can't say this, you can't do that, you've lost your job. And I think as well that what Joey Barton has done, he's raised a flag here, and I think people are flocking to his cause. I wish him well in many ways, but change the language a bit, mate. That's my only advice.
No, I agree. I certainly would remove some of the language on it. I don't think language necessarily adds to it, but hey, who am I to critique whenever he's setting Twitter on fire? Let's move on to something completely different, and it's the topic of religion. And this is Islam. Now, you've done a number of posts. I think we'll pull up one more on this as well.
Sure.
But looking at Iran, and this is a quote from Ayatollah Khomeini about men having sex with animals. So it can only go uphill from here, I guess.
Sure.
But it's interesting that I think often in the West, it's thought that actually cultures all fit in and can combine, but there is a massive cultural clash between Islamic ideas and between Western ideas, and I think this kind of points that out.
Sure. I think also when you said that to me, I was quite surprised actually, and I've seen that before actually, and I've tried to trace that back to an original source. I think it does exist. I think that is true. But why I think there is so much zoophilia, I think that's a polite name for sex with animals, zoophilia. is that because you have in Islamic culture that the principle of multiple wives, there's a lot of single men, knocking around who have got nothing, and so they have to get rid of their sexual frustrations somewhere. And this is one of the reasons why they like coming to Britain. I'm sure it's one of the reasons they like coming to Britain. That women here are available, and we tend to be relatively monogamous in the sense we tend to have one-on-one relationships. People might commit adultery or stray from the fold, but generally speaking, it's very, very rare for a non-Muslim in this country to have more than one wife. There's obviously rich people who might have mistresses, which might be kind of the same thing. But generally speaking, most of us aren't rich enough to have a mistress. So therefore, I can only assume that zoophilia within the Islamic community is obviously not all of them do it. It seems to be, from what I can see, is basically the lower socio-economic people who are doing this. But it does go on, and it seems to, well, as you see that from Iran, it is condoned. But you got to think yourself, backward savages.
It is, and let's bring up the next one because it fits into that, but is about how women are treated. And you put up the barbaric regime of Iran has resumed the public flogging of women for failing to wear a hijab. Roya Heshmati received 74 lashes for her crime, the crime of not wearing a bit of clothing on her head.
Sure.
And again, we've imported this here, haven't we? I mean, you've discussed Islam, you've discussed those clashes. It leads into conversational grooming gangs, on honor-based violence, all of that. So tell us your thoughts on this.
Right. Okay. Well, the subtext of this in Iran is, if you're not aware, in 1979, Iran, under the Shah of Peacock, was a secular state, and there was an Islamic revolution in 1979, and he was deposed. I think what happened was Jimmy Carter was then president of the United States of America, and he thought Iran was getting too powerful, and he was quite happy to see the Islamists take over the country. Absolutely terrible decision. And so therefore, the Ayatollah Khomeini was the first leader of the Islamic Revolution, and he's what's what I'm looking for? He's applied most draconian laws, and particularly on women. Whereby in Iran you will be stoned for adultery. Women are obliged to wear the hijab, and there's been a great revolt against it. It's not only the 40 lashes we have to worry about. I've just very briefly looking up her name at the moment, but some women have actually been executed for it. Rita Geravand was executed. She was arrested by the Iranian morality police, and she was beaten into a coma, and she later died in a coma for simply not wearing a hijab. There's a subtext here, is because the Iranians are getting increasingly angry at the Iranian regime. I don't know whether you know, 35% of Iranians have converted to Christianity. 35% as a mark of protest. And have you noticed the Iranian flag? With the Iranian flag, there's two types. The Shah of Peacock had a lion on it, and the Islamic Iranian flag looks like a tulip. Apparently, it means Allah, from what I've been able to research from it. And if you see all those the Iranian flags with a lion on it, they're actually standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel and Jews at the moment, and they're the people you see at some of the pro-Israeli rallies waving their flag. There is kind of a mass revolt without violence at the moment from the people. Something like 2,000 mosques in Iran have been burnt to the ground by anti-Islamic cleric activists. I say something. What the world would greatly benefit from would be a regime change in Iran. In Iran, in 1979 and before, under the Shah, women became westernized. Women wore short skirts. Women wore sleeveless tops. women were allowed to go out drinking and smoking and be on their own. It basically became, and to be fair, I'll say something, it's very, very rare to find an Iranian who was allowed in post 1979 and their family and descendants not to fit in here. If there's a group of Muslims that do fit into Britain, it's Iranians. I don't even know a guy called Maya Tusi.
Yep.
Tusi. Yeah. I think his parents, left Iran, and and you don't find it any more British than that, and anybody more anti-extremist Muslim, extremist Islamic. So that's the background to that. So basically, Iran has become a backward Islamic barbaric state.
Yeah, no, we've had Annie Cyrus on a number of times and been on her show, and she fled from Iran. I think it was a child bride. Fled. So you talk to those who she fled, became a Christian later, married to, so just obviously left that, wanted a level of freedom.
Yeah.
But then with Iran, I worry about the calls for regime change, because growing up I would have said just bomb the crap out of them. Now actually it's not our problem, and I worry about the calls, especially what's happening in the Middle East, which is a whole separate issue we're not really getting into this time. But I worry about the calls for let's go in on Iran. I think actually let's hold off and think of the repercussions of that, whether that's
I'm not calling for direct engagement with Iran. What I'm saying is, I'm just praying that the Iranians can depose the Islamic State over there. Maybe we can give them some surreptitious help, and help by the back door. Biden gave Iran billions of pounds. I should have researched the reason why, but I think it was sequestrated from Iran. He's giving it all back. And so therefore they've been on a spending spree at the moment, and that's the reason. One of the reasons why we've got the conflict in Israel and Gaza at the moment. They've been funding the Palestinians and Hamas for years and years and years, and also Iran is funding the Houthis in the Yemen as well, that are threatening all the ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Horrible people, horrible regime. It needs to go. And and quite frankly, if Iran was to become secular again and Western again, that would put a tremendous pressure on the whole of the Middle East area. For oh look, they're doing that in Iran. Why can't we do that? And also be a buffer with Afghanistan as well, and also Turkey as well. Erdogan's becoming a lot more aggressive as a leader, and how he gets away with deporting 2 million Syrians while we can't deport one asylum seeker, I've got no idea. But anyway, that's how they do things over there. So if Iran fall, I think the world in the medium to long term will become a lot more peaceful.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, let's go on to immigration here in the UK, and this is, you'd reposted Matthew Goodwin. Let me just put up what you said, and then let's listen to him, because it's just short. And this was what you said. Professor of Politics Matthew Goodwin points out fundamentally British people need to be housed first. Shocking statement. He adds close to half of all social housing in London goes to households that are headed by somebody who is not born in Britain. But I'll let our viewers, listeners, take not just what you thought of it, David, but let me play this 1 minute of Matthew speaking.
But today, anybody out there who's tried to rent an apartment recently knows this. Anybody out there who's tried to buy a home recently knows this. You're turning up with 20, 25 other people, often people that, to be blunt, weren't born in Britain and are not from Britain.
But those people still need to be housed, though, Matt.
Yeah,
those people still need to be housed.
They need to be housed, but fundamentally, Paul, British people need to be housed first. Right, that is fundamentally what needs to happen.
Right, let's address that, Stat, because last time you was on with me anyway, we had this conversation. I'm good to see I'm so memorable, I like that. But we had this conversation about people that was in social housing and the demographics of them and all the rest of it. It all went viral on social media, didn't it? So what was the point that you was making? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember crystal clear. Most people don't know this. So if you look at social housing in London, not across the country, about 48%, close to half of all social housing in London goes to households that are headed by somebody who was not born in Britain. Personally, I don't think that's a sustainable situation. I don't think it's the right situation. I think we need to revert to a model of social housing that gives clear preference to people who have been in the country for a long period of time, who have paid into the collective pot. And we need to, I think, stand back and think about this housing crisis in terms of where population growth is going. Give you one stat, right? If we keep doing what we're doing in this country, by about 2045, which really isn't that far away, we're going to have about 10 cities the size of Birmingham. That's what we're going to need in terms of population growth if we keep doing what we're going to do.
Oh, no, let me remove that completely.
God, pretend no conferring on what you said there.
So it was, I've really got to like Matthew Goodwin more and more the more I've seen of him. And earlier on, I kind of thought, well, he's maybe just like a think tankish person, kind of hatched on with the Tories. But actually, over the years, maybe it mightn't be that he's moved. It might just be my perception of him has changed. But I've really enjoyed it, and this was full on common sense that actually the government should be thinking of British people and housing them.
How dare them?
Yeah,
how dare they? You know.
So tell your Matthew Goodwin. What are your thoughts on him, and what do you think of his comments on this?
Well, he's been on a journey. I think. Someone pulled up an article we wrote for the Guardian in 2013, 10 years ago. It was how we can integrate Muslims into Britain. It was all wet. It was all the kind of wet academic drippy rubbish that you expect from a professor of politics. I think he's been on a journey. I think facts and reality have hit him straight in the face. He's quite correct. It's outrageous that 50% of London social housing is given to people who aren't born here. Quite frankly, if you can't afford, it's the principle of Friedman, Milton Friedman. He said you got two choices: you either have open borders but no welfare, or you have welfare but you have closed borders. You can't have both. And quite frankly, there was a poll that was done in about 2017 by Gallup, and they asked 454,177 people in 150 countries if you have a chance to emigrate to anywhere in the world, would you do it? And of course, all the countries they chose were Western Europe, Europe, America, Australasia. They extrapolated from that 10% of the world, 750 million people would emigrate to the West, and 34 million chose Britain. So we're between 0 and 34 million guys. Do you feel comfortable importing into this country? We have to draw a line somewhere. I think we spend something like £1 billion a year treating people from overseas. And we don't have a list over here, do we? We really don't have a list of people waiting to be treated. So, by the way, there's people from some parts of the world who are far worse than other people. Sure. Apparently, the figure for Somalis, I've got this from Matt Goodwin because I did see his tweet, and it's something like 72% of Somalis live in social housing, and out of interest, 73% of Somalis in London are unemployed. 73% are on welfare. These people are of no economic use to this country. You got to be blunt about it. They will be perpetually and eternally a drain on our taxes. So and quite frankly, going back to what Milton Friedman was saying, you can't pay welfare to immigrants from third world countries. You can't do it because you'll just encourage them to come over here, and the situation will get worse and worse and worse. And you look at the social unrest that's happening in this country. Yeah. Even I was shocked at the numbers that turned out on Saturday afternoons supporting Hamas terrorists and supporting the Palestinian cause. Okay, there's lots of lefty idiots and lefty useful idiots in that as well. But I was shocked that 100,000 people turned up who have no empathy for British values, the Enlightenment, Western liberal democracy. They're just a bunch of bullying thugs who want to take over this country. It's and impose their will on us. How bloody dare you? Really, quite frankly, this is a marvelous opportunity. Excuse me, I'm ranting at the moment. This is a marvelous opportunity for get the police, get the army in, whack, arrest them all, get hold of them. Let's have a look at your documents. If you're not a British citizen, you should go home. And I mean, now you're on the first plane out of here. What will happen is, have I ever mentioned to you the history of Texas to you?
No, we've had a number of Texans on, but
let me give the history of Texas. This is where it might end up. And it's the most politically correct example I can think of, Peter. Texas was a part of Mexico.
Yep.
And in the 1820s, President Santa Anna encouraged Europeans from America to settle in Texas because it was completely underdeveloped. And ironically, most of the people who went over there were Americans of British heritage. And so, being British, they went to Texas. It's semi-desert. I've been there myself. My brother used to live there, actually. It's semi-desert. And with farming and cattle rearing and what have you, they made it a success. But anyway, cut a long story short, they became the majority in Texas. And in the east of Texas were cotton fields. And the British Americans wanted to import African-American slaves to pick the cotton. And Santa Anna, rightly and understandably, said no. And that sparked a war, which Santa Anna lost. So basically, Santa Anna lost Texas as a piece of Mexican land because from sheer mass immigration of Americans into the state. In fact, Texas was an independent country for about 7 years until they were taken over by the Americans. This is this sort of sectarianism, this violence. We've seen it in Ireland and Northern Ireland. If you look at the sectarian violence between the Hindus and the Muslims in Leicester, the other day there was in Camberwell, the Tigray and Eritreans ratted together. Yeah. This is the future of Britain at its present levels of immigration, and it will not get any better. Things will never improve in this country, and all we can look forward to is a reduction in the quality of life, in more violence, and more frankly sexual sorts of things like that. We are really standing on the edge of an abyss here as a culture, as a nation, and it's. For the last, by the way, I've also traced back social attitudes to immigration going back to 1950. Every single opinion poll from 1950 to 2024, there was a majority of Brits who said there is too much immigration to come into this country. And I'm not threatening anything here, but we've tried persuasion, we tried our tweets, we've written to newspapers, we've voted in general elections, and we're still being bloody ignored by the establishment of this country. Where else can we go?
Yeah, and one of the problems is those politicians at the top. I'm sure Rishi Sunak doesn't understand the pressures that it causes on your community, and literally when they don't understand the difficulties that people face to get on the housing ladders.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a stereotype, a pastiche, if you like. But if, for example, if you're a scaffolder and you live on a council estate, and Ali's playing his greatest hits of the Taliban at 2:00 in the morning, when you got sort of gossamer tissue paper walls in your council flat, and you've got to go to work at 7:00 in the morning, stick up full stories of scaffolding. You pass the stairwell where a load more of them are sitting. They hate you because you don't buy their drugs. What kind of, it's all right when you live in Hampstead and you've got this massive Georgian house. It's about 10 foot full, 10 foot thick walls. Thank you very much. And your next door neighbour, is the ambassador, of the Ivory Coast or something like that. He's a very civilized geezer, no doubt. But the rest of us have to pick up the pieces of your decisions.
Yeah, not completely.
Sorry, I'm ranting again. Sorry.
No. Let's let's move on to. Well, actually, said it wasn't going to touch Israel. We're not really, but this Lee Hurst, and to bring a bit of comedy into it. Lee Hurst is so good. Breaking news: the IDF say the main reason for the leveling of buildings in Gaza is to make it safe for Owen Jones to visit. Cranes have also been removed. It is showing the hypocrisy of the left, and it would be wonderful if Owen Jones went in with a LGBT press flag and went there and maybe did some reporting, but I guess he would feel unsafe.
Well, we'd always send him to Iran or Saudi Arabia or Qatar, or there's a whole host of countries. 14 Islamic countries have got the death penalty for homosexual acts. We touched on Iran very briefly. The left supported the Ayatollahs in 1979 in Iran. They called it Marxism with Islam. That's what they called it, Marxism with Islam. In 1982, they're all taken out and put against the wall and shot. But apparently, something like 30,000 leftist Iranians were killed by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Only goes to show you where it's going to go. But Owen Jones, his complete lack of objectivity and understanding of what's going on there. To move things around the other way, there was a video I posted a couple of weeks ago, whereby I entitled it "Queers for Palestine meets Palestine." It's a gay guy who's having a row with a woman in a hijab in French, and someone translated it for me. It's actually quite sad. The gay Muslim guy says, "It's because of people like you I had to leave my country." I think that's really, really sad that someone felt so under threat. An LGBT person felt so under threat. They felt obliged to go and live in another country. In Israel, they will accept for asylum gay Arabs and gay Muslims.
Yeah.
I've got the guy's name. It was a guy who'd applied for asylum in Israel. He was beheaded, and this was in the West Bank. Wasn't it? Theoretically, homosexuality is legal in the West Bank, but it's illegal in Gaza. But going back to Owen Jones, the sheer stupidity of the man beggars belief. Really does beggar belief. Go there, mate. Don't sit on your podcast here. Treating us all as idiots. Go there, report, and see what happens to you.
But it is much safer writing the Guardian piece from wherever he is in the UK.
Yeah, sure.
You'd put another post actually on Islam and in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And this, I had to go and I had to click, and yes, it is correct. This is what the Telegraph is telling us. If you want to know how Muslims infiltrated the Met Police and Dancerton, here's the evidence. The Met are to investigate Israeli war crimes in Gaza. Counter-terrorism police have appealed for witnesses traveling through British airports to report allegations of war crimes. I thought the Met Police would be busy investigating all the hate crimes that we have in this country without actually worrying about war crimes.
Oh, come on! There's millions of tweets every day, Peter. The police got far more important things to do. How dare you? You got all these people putting up these nasty posts about trans people. These should be in court, being hung, drawn, and quartered at a later date. I think the better to be trying to give some balance here. I think they also refer to Hamas terrorists as well. But
it's not a hate crime to call Hamas terrorists. I don't know.
Well,
not, yes.
No, I think I might be safe on that one for a change. But to answer your question, on this one, that is just appeasement. I think the police forces in this country, every single one of them, live in fear of the Muslim lobby. And let me quickly break this down. I'm not talking about the majority of relatively moderate and peaceful Muslims in this country. I'm talking about the leaders, the 20% of extremists, the leaders who supposedly represent their community. They're the ones who are crying Islamophobia all the time. You know, do you remember Luther Rahman of Tower Hamlets, Mayor of Tower Hamlets? He was done for massive voter fraud. He was ejected from office. It was voter fraud on a biblical scale.
Yeah.
Why the police never prosecuted him is completely, I can't work it out at all. And the so and the little sod's been re-elected again. I don't know. I presume you know that as well. He's been re-elected as mayor of.
I know.
It's like it's like, for example, Rotherham. 1,400, 1,500 girls were raped.
Yeah.
And for 20 years it was covered up by social services, the council, and the police. I think the problem here is that if there was a if we robustly stood up to the Muslims in this country, all their leaders, I should say, they would incite civil unrest, and no chief constable wants to have to explain to the Home Secretary or Sadiq Khan in London why they are rioting on the streets. It's why the police got kid gloves on the Saturday afternoon Hamas demonstrations. Yeah. I went to the Cenotaph demonstration. I was a little bit late and it broken up. To a greater extent. And I was trying to get the Cenotaph to take some snaps and stick them on Twitter. And I asked the policeman, if I said gas the Jews, would you arrest me? And he said, yes, I would. If I said from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, will you arrest me? No, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I said to him, looking straight in the eye, I said, you do know they mean exactly the same thing. He didn't know. He didn't know. Played ignorant. And also, there are people in the Metropolitan Police know exactly what they mean. And the fact that Palestinian supporters in this country can do the equivalent of gas the Jews day in, day out without any let or hindrance, I think is absolutely disgusting. For the simple reason they know there will be a riot, and this is just bullying and intimidation on a very high level.
The police are not there for law and order. They're simply there to keep everyone calm, and so things don't get too hot and everyone can go home. And they want an easy job. And that's of course why the grooming gangs have developed into the atrocity they have, because they're not willing to have a race riot.
Sure.
As they said. Let's stateside, and this is Harvard. I know, but interesting how the media have covered it. This was in the Associated Press. Plagiarism charges downed Harvard's president. A conservative attack helped to fan the outrage, and the BBC blamed the culture wars for bringing her down. Of course, she was the first black lady, or the first black person heading up Harvard. A massive anger from the left that she has had to step down. I didn't think plagiarism was a great thing for your CV for someone leading an institute like Harvard, but maybe that's the norm. I don't know.
Sure. Plagiarism in Harvard's Code of Conduct is strictly banned. There's no wiggle room here. Plagiarism, is a reason to be expelled from the university, and is reason to be failed for your PhD or your MSc or your degree. So it's right that she went. I don't know whether you saw at all her pitch for the job, her written pitch for the job.
I didn't know.
No, okay. Fine. What she wanted to do was, as the first black woman president of Harvard, was institute institutional wokeism. And apparently, when it comes to free speech, Harvard, I think it was founded in 1635 by British Puritans.
Mm.
And that's right. It has the worst record for free speech of any university in America. And being one of the Ivy League universities, that is an utter shame and disgrace. There was a professor who did some research into police and black violence, and he came to the conclusion that the police in America do not disproportionately pick on black people. she had him removed.
Wow.
She had him removed just because you can, frankly, let's tell it how it is. You can see why so many countries in the world are third world shitholes.
Yeah.
You can see, if you don't have any honesty, if you don't have any enlightenment, if you don't have any freedom of speech, you would descend into the third world hellhole rabbit hole. And it was right that she went. I think they say that Britain is 2 years behind America, 1 to 2 years behind America. Do you ever watch Tim Carr?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, he said that the right, quote unquote, is winning the culture wars at the moment. We're scoring victory after victory, and we should press them home day after day after day. And so, what might be happening is the victory of the sensible, moderate people in this country, in a year or two's time, will come to Britain, and we will start winning and winning and winning. All 2 out of the 3. How can you ever condone or empathise the genocide of people? If someone said that about black people or Hispanic people or Asian people, their feet wouldn't have touched the ground. Yeah. As soon as they left their congressional hearing, their phone would be going off. With messages of being sacked on the spot. Give us a ring. You can't. But because it was Jews and because she was black, she thought she had a free pass. Yeah. All 3 of them had. All 3 of them were women, weren't they? From Penn and what have we? Well, let's hope the fight back starts here. I wish anybody of any race, any religion, well. They want to work hard and they've got talent, and whether it's in business or academia, I wish them very well. But let's have an even playing field and let's get there on merit.
Yep. Discrimination can never be positive, no matter how much you spin it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've seen that in Northern Ireland. But let's say you talked about shithole countries, and here is what we are importing. This is the Queen's Hotel in Crystal Palace, houses 450 migrants. So far, it has seen the rape of a 12-year-old and 17 of 12-year-old and 17 female staff have been sexually assaulted. A rape of one 12-year-old and 17 female staff have been sexually assaulted. Wow, I thought that was 2. I'm just now reading it, realize actually it's also 17. Residents may have to move to another hotel if they're not prepared to share rooms. What? Again, a conservative government is bringing this over and wondering why the electorate might be a bit pissed off whenever you're making your areas a little bit more rapey. Doesn't really appeal.
No, let me. Before I sort of respond to this, let me give you some context. Just bear with me a second. I'll just pull up my quote. The MP for Stroud, Conservative MP for Stroud, is Siobhan Bailey. And hang on a second. You can never find anything when you want it. Just bear with me a second. Sorry about this.
You see, you tweet too much. That's the problem with you.
but basically what she said on the 24th of October. That's right. Here I found it. Local residents and police have worked hard. See, this is recorded in Hansard, the parliamentary diary.
Yeah.
And the 24th of October, on a debate on asylum hotels, said, and I quote, "Local police and residents have worked hard to keep incidents out of the newspapers."
Wow.
So there's a cover-up going on.
Wow.
There is a cover-up going on, and in Weymouth, I've got a source in the Dorset area called Julie, and she sends me all the stuff that's going on there. In Bournemouth, there was that guy who there was the Afghan guy who murdered Thomas Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
He lied about his age. He shot dead 2 people in Serbia.
Yeah,
he was allowed into this country, and he killed Tom Roberts.
Yeah,
that's one. And And also recently, there was a woman who was, quotes, sexually assaulted by 2 men in Weymouth as they were coming out of a nightclub at 3 o'clock in the morning. There is, up and down the country, major incidents in and around asylum hotels. And the government is doing their very best to suppress what is going on. You know, when you have bored, low educational migrants from third world shitholes, I'm just going to use the word again, often being brought up in Islam, it is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for sexual assault and violence in some cases. Not all. I'm sure the majority are, have a certain level of gratitude attached to them, but there's a substantial proportion that don't. And what I really object to is a government that is weak in sending these people back and weak in dealing with the problem. And also police are complicit in covering up as well.
Yeah, no, it's a failure on multiple levels and one of a Conservative government's making. But of course, there's good news. One great thing the Conservative Party have done, and I'm sure you were so overwhelmed with joy, David, when you saw that the whole backlog has been cleared. It's just gone.
Sure.
And this is magical, absolutely magical. The government can take this backlog, and they said they were going to get rid of it by the end of the year, and they have. Just like that, they've just spoken, and it is done. I wonder, has there been a little bit of messing around with the figures?
I think this is creative accountancy at its best. I could have a PhD in chartered accountancy, and I could do a better job than James Cleverly. James Cleverly, I think, has been promoted to Home Secretary because he's weak and he's pathetic, and he won't make any decisions. He'll do as his civil servants say. We are being gaslit as a country. Rishi Sunak has no motivation or empathy with the British public on this. He's just mouthing what he needs to say to stop the losses of the next general election. The really sad thing about it is, I think there's 106 people who were part of the One Nation Conservative grouping in the Conservative Party. I think I had about 300 MPs, and they tend to be more senior people as well. The One Nation. It was the people that Baroness Thatcher referred to as the Wets.
Yes.
These are the people who you can't get a fag paper between them and Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
The thought of a Keir Starmer government fills me with fear. But unfortunately, if you want to look at the long-term solution, I think the Conservative Party in the next election needs to be slaughtered. It should be shown that he paid the price for failing to deal with immigration. And it should prove to Sir Keir Starmer he will never get re-elected again as Prime Minister if he doesn't take a tough line on immigration. And what we really need, in my opinion, is regime change. Whether it's reform, whether it's UKIP or whatever it is, we need, or the Heritage Party or Reclaim Party, we need regime change in this country. And also what we need to do, we need to clear out of the Home Office. I seriously would consider sacking the whole civil service, from Matthew Rycroft, the permanent secretary, right through to the security guard, and start all over again, and employ people who want to have a robust challenge to immigration. I don't believe a damn word that Rishi Sunak says. It's the old joke about how can you tell Rishi Sunak's lying and the other politician, his lips are moving. Yeah. I don't believe a damn word. And what we really need to show the Conservative Party at the next election, we are so upset, we are so angry at the way you dealt with immigration for 13 bloody years. Yeah. It's not a case of, this is happening in the last few weeks or whatever. And the fact you won't withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights, and you have no sympathy for this people in this country. You should pay the price for that. You have to go, and we need regime change. It may take 10, 20 years to do it, but we need to do that. Or if we do not deal with this matter, the effects of it will be far worse You look at what's happened. Your blueprint for what will happen in Britain. You only have to look at Sweden, where I think they had last year they had something like 900 bombings. They had 200 shootings. There's a population of 10 million. Britain's about 70 million. You multiply it by 7. Could you imagine living in a country where we had 7,000 bombings a year? 2,000 shootings a year. We'd be outraged. And still, I think the Swedes have woken up to a certain extent, but the judiciary, like the judiciary of Britain, is just pathetic. I'm told that Tony Blair had all these new reforms coming. I need to fact check this, so you don't have to take me. You don't have to assume this is true. But apparently, if you wanted to become a judge under Tony Blair, you had to write an essay of what you've done for multiculturalism.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
But my fear is that with UKIP, it was a single issue, which was Europe and Brexit. Yeah. We don't. The culture wars are not a single issue. Immigration is. Yeah. But then we don't have a figure, and I don't know if we have a political entity with the ability to actually champion an issue that pulls many people on the common sense and the right side, left, because Brexit was left and right, sure, pulls them together. And I don't know if we have a figure, a charismatic figure, and you can only rule Nigel Farage out so many times.
Yeah, I know.
I think,
you know what you mean.
Let him retire, but someone else has to step in. We don't have that. That's my concern, that we're not seeing the rise we're seeing across Europe.
Well, I suppose charismatic figures really come about between 1 and 10 to 20 years. So if you look back in history, who do you consider to be charismatic? Baroness Thatcher, Sir Winston Churchill, maybe Clement Attlee, possibly Tony Blair. I'll put him down as being charismatic. So there's 4 people since World War II.
So yeah, every 20 years. So we've got a while to wait. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to blow smoke up somebody's arse, but I'll tell you, this is my tip for the next Nigel Farage, maybe in 30 years' time, 30 years' time. Connor Tomlinson. The guy. To my mind, the guy's got the charisma. He's got the knowledge as well. You'll never defeat him in a debate. But Connor Tomlinson, I think, is a man to watch for the future, and I think he could well be the next Nigel Farage of Britain. I really do wish him well. He's a standout person. But I watch a lot of social media. I watch a lot of mainstream media on politics. He's the bloke I think for the future. I think will do this country proud.
Okay. Well, on that, we'll bring it to a close. You'd posted a picture which I thought was, obviously you didn't personally take, you've come across, but a phenomenal picture. And I think it shows the situation which we face coming to a town like yours soon. And there is a white Brit driving, and it's a whole busload of looks like Indian background immigrants coming in. I think that picture sums up the situation we currently have in the UK. So it's a great picture.
Yeah, well, I should have put that through Google Lens actually, because I've been caught out a couple of times recently that some stuff's been photoshopped or it's been taken out of context. Yes, that is the future we're looking for. I think between 2050 and 2060, we will become a minority in our own country at current immigration and birth rates. We have a very stark future. Our children and grandchildren have a very stark future to look forward to, and we are just making things worse. And there is no stopping. There's no stopping the establishment. I think all the wokies that work the whole establishment of this country, academia, the civil service, politicians to a greater extent, hate Britain. They have no respect for Britain. We deserve to be a minority. Us Europeans deserve to be a minority in our own country. And I think that's very, very sad. I think when it comes to empires, I think Britain is probably the most benign that ever existed. It's one of the things I've never quite understood. I believe we kept an army of 100,000 people in India. We had a population of about, it's about 300 or 400 million in the 19th century, 300 or 400 million. We had an army of 100,000 and a civil service of 10,000 people. Despite what a lot of middle class Indians say, that we must have governed with a greater level of consent than what it is. For example, we outlaw sati, whereby if a man dies, so they put the Hindus put him on a funeral pyre, but the wife who was still alive had to join him there. We banned out that. Also, the cult of thuggee is where we get the word thug from. Thuggee, we outlawed that as well. We also in India we brought 8 times more land into farmland through irrigation. We built 41,000 miles of railways over there, which, if you look at HS2 costs, is worth 41 trillion pounds today. Cool, I get me noughts in the right place there. It's what No, we left a legacy. That's in India. I appreciate we could be quite ruthless in putting down dissent and what have you. And it's one thing I say to a lot of my Irish followers. I voted for Brexit. I will vote for Brexit again. I've come to understand Irish nationalism a whole lot more. I do not want to be ruled by a foreign person. So I've understand Irish nationalism a lot more. I understand Indian nationalism. When they got their independence in 1947. But if you look at the Ottoman Empire, the Mughal Empire, the Black Batapa Empire, the Ashanti Ghanaian Empire, they were brutal wars, and which involved slavery, selling of gold and ivory. And it was achieved by conquest. Now, they were just, they were far worse than the British Empire, far worse. And if you look at some of the Islamic empires as well, again, they're far more brutal than us. And what do? We spread democracy, we spread science, we spread goodwill, philosophy, good ideas. If you want a really hard comment on this one, Britain in the Americas colonized, obviously, America and Canada. The French and the Portuguese settled in Central and South America. And really, it wasn't until the 1970s that these countries in Central and South America became vaguely democratic. They were mostly ruled by Marxist or fascist dictatorships. And they remain achingly poor, to a greater extent. If Britain had gone to South America and the Spanish had gone to North America, I think the results would have been reversed. South America will be prospering, and North America will be dirt poor. So we as an emperor, I think people should have a lot more gratitude for us.
Yeah, 100%. Well, on that, we will finish off. David, thanks so much for coming on, and people can obviously follow you on your Twitter handle, which is there, David Atherton 20. Thank you so much for your time today.
Peter, thank you for inviting me on. Always a pleasure.
Always good. And let me just leave the viewers with one thing in-house. We have our podcast. Dwight Schultz has just dropped number 7. Dwight, my childhood hero from A-Team, Harley Mad Murdoch, and it's phenomenal to get to know him and for him to do that podcast for us every couple of weeks. So the 7th one has just dropped. So do go and find that on Podbean or any of the podcasting apps, whichever ones you use. So on that, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your evening. Enjoy your weekend, your Sunday, whatever you're doing. Have a great time. I will be back with you on Monday evening at 8 o'clock as usual. So thank you so much. And